Deathless Titans placed upon the face of the earth 3 generations of men. The first of them being men of gold. Becoming too close to gods themselves, Cronus ended their time on earth with an eternal sleep. A second generation came to be, the men of silver. Unwilling to serve the Titans and make sacrifices upon the holy altars, as all men shall do, they were condemned to dwell under the earth for all eternity. Finally, a third generation, the men of bronze, a brazen race sprung from the ash tree. Terrible and strong are they. Join me as I tell you the tales of the men of bronze. This is Dragon's Blood, Odyssey to Dionysodoros, Episode 3. Gamden wasn't sure if it was a good idea to go into Khaemwaset. The city guard would most certainly remember what he did last time he was in town. Good thing he knew the kind of people that live in the shadows. He will have to slip some gold coins into the hands of a few old friends to get into the front gates. First stop will be the Crown Jester Tavern, to talk to Jardz. He knows everything that goes on in Khaemwaset, and everyone. Nebeta was an old city, built around a natural harbor in the southern part of the island. The inner city was basically a shanty town, while the gentry had their palaces and mansions on the outskirts. Making his way through the streets, crowded with vendors and thieves, he arrived at the tavern. Gamden walked into a noisy room full of people drinking and eating. He walked up to the bar, found an empty mug, and banged it loudly to attract the attention of the tapster. Quickly, a tall young man with boring brown eyes and dark clothes walked over and said, "What's your poison?" "I'll have an ale," replied Gamden. "Copper piece up front," said the barkeep. "No tabs." The barkeep tapped his fingers impatiently while Gamden fished through his pockets. His pouch had nothing but gold and diamonds, and Gamden didn't want that kind of wealth displayed openly in this place. Finding the correct pocket, he pulled out a handful of copper pieces, buttons, and colored pebbles, spilled them out onto the counter, and found a coin. The barkeep grunted, scooped up the tender, and went to get some ale. Gamden looked around, trying to find Jardz in the room, but no luck. When the tapster returned, Gamden said, "Where's Jardz?" "Can't see him." "Who wants to know?" asked the barkeep. "Me? Oh, I'm no one special. I just need to ask Jardz a couple of questions." "If you need to know, it will cost you." The barkeep looked down and pointed to the buttons and pebbles. "Looks like you can't afford nothing," then laughed in Gamden's face. "Would this be enough?" Gamden pulled out a nice, bright gold coin stamped with the crowns of the 3 kingdoms from the pouch hanging around his neck. The bartender whistled, then said, "How'd you get the king's gold?" 3 drunks next to Gamden overheard the conversation and stumbled toward them. "What's this about the king's gold?" "Shut up, you drunken fools, and go away," said the barkeep in a menacing tone, "or I'll have you thrown out on your asses." "No, you shut up, and this young'un here can share some of that gold," one of the drunks said while wringing his hands. "Amos, get over here now," called out the barkeep. From the other end of the bar came a tall, fat, young man in thick black leather pants, boots, and studded vest. The drunks never saw him coming. Amos backhanded one of them so hard that he flew several feet through the air, crashing, unconscious, into the nearby table. The other 2 turned around in time to feel them smash their heads together, and they too fell to the ground. "They owe you money, boss?" "Nah, they're just pissing me off." The barkeep thought about what should be done with them, then continued, "Throw them in the gutter to sleep it off." "Okay, boss." Amos grabbed the 2 drunks at his feet by their collar with one hand, then walked over and grabbed the 3rd drunk with the other and dragged them away. Gamden sighed a breath of relief that no one else heard what had just happened. He had to keep a low profile while he was here, especially with all the gold and diamonds in his pouch. "You a bounty hunter on the king's business?" asked the bartender. "No, I'm on my way to Khaemwaset, and I need to find a friend." The barkeep looked him up and down, then said, "Wow, you look too young to be of any danger." He pointed to the balcony, then continued, "He's in his private room in the back. High stakes, bare-knuckle fight. Jardz has lots of gold riding on his man. When you get up there, tell the doorman I said it was okay." Gamden grabbed his ale and made his way through the crowd to the staircase. Every stair seemed to have a drunk or a prostitute on it, trying to get a coin any way they could. When he made it to the top of the stairs, he quickly went through all his pockets to make sure that nothing was missing. Sure that he had not been pickpocketed, he walked up to the doorman and said, "The bartender said that I could get in to see Jardz." The doorman, who was dressed like the minder downstairs, looked down and across the room to the bartender, who nodded his head and gave a thumbs up. The doorman was satisfied with that. He unlocked the door and allowed Gamden to pass. Gamden walked into a small arena where two men were fighting. Torches lined the wall. Beaten and polished silver mirrors behind each torch lit the room perfectly. Jardz sat at one end of the oval in a chair that was raised above the action, while his opponent sat across from him in a similarly raised position. Several other people surrounded the arena, cheering and betting on the combatants. Gamden walked up to where Jardz sat and shouted, "Jardz! Jardz! It's Gamden!" No luck. He was completely involved in the match. Gamden jumped up and down and waved his arms and shouted out again, but to no avail. Jardz was a big fat man who ate and drank ale all day, but could crush your skull between his hands, and he was known to do so to those who crossed him. He dressed in a toga for convenience. Being so fat, he didn't bother with pants and such. Knowing that it was a waste of time trying to get Jardz's attention anymore, Gamden made his way to the fight and watched for a bit, but also kept an eye on Jardz. Two men near the boards of the arena were betting on the fight. 20 gold coins that a Delphius man will take the fight in the next 2 minutes." "I'll take that bet," the other man shouted back. The fighters exchanged several blows. Then Jardz's fighter knocked his opponent to the ground. Jardz stood up and shouted over everyone else, "He's down! Finish him! Finish him now!" In the blink of an eye, the fighter mounted his rival. 3 blows to the jaw and an elbow to the temple, and the match was over. "Yes!" shouted Jardz. "Yes! I win again!" He climbed down from his chair and waddled across the room to the opponent, laughing all the way. No matter where you were in a room, you could hear Jardz over everything else. "It was a good fight, but my boy has never lost." He grabbed his sack of gold, turned around, and with an enormous smile on his face shouted, "Drinks are on me tonight!" Everyone in the room cheered their appreciation. Jardz paid his fighter the gold pieces he had promised him, then waddled toward the balcony overlooking the tavern. Gamden saw his chance, ran up to Jardz while he was still in a good mood and said, "Jardz! Hey Jardz! It's me, Gamden! Do you have a couple minutes for me?" "What? Who?" "Oh, Gamden, my boy." "Yes. Come drink with me and celebrate my victory," shouted Jardz as he gave Gamden a hearty slap on the back that knocked the wind right out of him. For a big fat man, Jardz toddled along quickly, and Gamden had to double time it to keep up. "Come on, boy, I'm thirsty. Let's get some ale in us." He burst through the doors to the balcony and shouted, "Get me and my friend some ale. Now!" Jardz kept a tapster and went upstairs for just such occasions. Completely out of breath, Jardz collapsed into his chair. The doorman walked over and took the sack of gold. Jardz held on to it for a second, reached into the bag and took out 2 gold pieces. "This is for you, boy. Put my winnings with the rest. Then come back and get some ale for yourself." Gamden was served a stein of ale, and Jardz received 2 tankards, overflowing with ale, by the wench. "Drink with me, my boy!" shouted Jardz. They toasted one another. Gamden had a couple of drinks while Jardz emptied his tankard in one big swig. As he did, some ale spilled down the many rolls of his neck, soaking his toga down the front. When he had emptied his vessel, Jardz slammed it down on the table, stopped breathing for a moment, then belched out loud and long. After wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, Jardz said, "What did you need to talk to me about?" "Yeah, I need to find Senisret. Have you seen him lately?" "Senisret? Of course I have." Jardz paused to have another drink of ale, then continued. "He just finished a job for me. Should be in Khaemwaset right now. That's where he said he was going. Had some debts to take care of. He's a good boy. I hire him when I need to collect on debts." "Ha! Funny, isn't it? The boy had to collect on my debts to pay his." Jardz laughed heartily at his own joke. "Perfect. I know exactly where he should be then. One more thing, Jardz. I'm going to need some help getting back into Khaemwaset. You must know some people that can get me past the guard, right?" Jardz wiped the sweat away from his forehead, laughed, then said, "Yes, I remember now. You made the captain of the guard look the fool. And because of that, I'm going to help you." Jardz slapped Gamden on the shoulder so hard, he fell out of his chair. "Me and the captain have conflicting ideas as to who supplies his city with alcohol and drugs." With that, he drank the last of the ale in his tankard. "Ah, that's great, Jardz," said Gamden, as he slowly got back into his chair. "But first, let's drink, boy! Celebrate my victory!" "Wench, bring me and my friend more ale!" shouted Jardz. Look for episode 4 of Dragon's Blood, Odyssey to Dionysodoros, on YouTube.